Council in session. Please stand for the Worshipful, the Mayor of the Borough Dacorum, Councillor Brenda Link.
Thank you, everyone. You may sit. What's that one? Oh, yeah, thank you. Shall I start? Agenda item 1, declarations of interest. Do we have any? Councillor Symington. Oh, no, sorry. Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Matt. I need to make a declaration of interest because my home address is opposite the Marshcroft site that will be discussed in the local plan this evening. So unfortunately, I cannot take part in the discussion.
Oh, get nearer the microphone. Can you? They can't hear you.
I was saying I can't take part in the discussion or vote this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you, Mayor. Due to a conflict of interest or possible conflict of interest of one of the developments near my home, I won't be joining the discussion on the draft local plan tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Symington.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to declare the following interests. Firstly, I am the Dacorum Borough Council representative on the Chiltern Conservation Board. I am a Hertfordshire County Councillor in Tring Division, and I have previously spoken on behalf of Tring residents at the Marshcroft Appeal land east of Tring. I understand that I can take part in the discussions and vote in the debate, but I wanted to be clear about my roles.
Right, thank you. Thank you. And Councillor Pringle.
Yes, I do not have a declaration of interest, but I do have a point of order because I do not understand why councillors who are elected by their wards are not allowed to speak on a debate that affects their wards. As you can see by the number of public who have turned out this evening, there is a lot of interest, and to prevent Councillor Wilkie and Councillor Reynolds contributing to that debate, because they are the very people who understand the issues that those who elect them want them to speak about, seems very undemocratic and counterintuitive, and I would therefore wish to ask for the precedent upon and the legal guidance upon which this advice was given, because as I understand it, this advice is given by the administration to those councillors, and they do not necessarily agree with it. I would like to hear what the law is, please.
All right, I took your point. Councillors Constable. Right, I've been advised that it's in line with the Council's Constitution and Code of Conduct, and it's not something that we can debate tonight.
Thank you very much for that clarification. I consider that, with greatest respect, that is an inadequate response and could leave the council open to judicial review if those are excluded.
Order.
That is a legal point, and I
This
put you on
isn't
notice
open
of
for
that.
debate. It isn't a debate.
I'm putting you on notice of a legal position. I believe the council is in error.
Point of order. I've already said it. I can have you removed. Right, you've made your point. Right, I'll carry on now. Right.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Councillor England.
This is a public meeting. Public are present. Councillors have a duty to behave themselves in front of the public, and I would ask that Councillor Pringle is reminded from the chair that is required.
Thank you.
I'm grateful for Councillor England's intervention, and of course I concede his point. Upholding the law is very important
Point
in
of
this
order.
council.
Please
Thank
stop.
you, Miss. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Right. Under agenda item 2, I have a short announcement to confirm that this is an extraordinary meeting of the council called to consider a referral from Cabinet on the local plan. Additionally, due to the adjournment of the ordinary meeting of the council on the 25th of September 2024, we will also be considering any business from that agenda that we were not able to transact as set out in the summons. You may therefore notice that the agenda run in order tonight differs slightly from an ordinary meeting. This evening we're going to be discussing an important document for the borough, and it is important that this meeting is conducted in a civil and orderly manner, and I will call the meeting to order if I do not feel this advice is being heeded. I would also remind you that no confidential information should be shared during any discussions or debate. Right, moving on. Announcements by the Chief Executive, if there are any.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to confirm the following political changes within the Council. Councillor Governhan Silwell, Ward Councillor for Grove Hill, has joined the Labour Party. Councillor Ron Tyndall, Ward Councillor for Adeyfield West, is now an independent councillor. In addition, following their announcement at the council meeting on 25th of September 2024, the following councillors has resigned from the Liberal Democrat Party and will each stand as an independent councillor representing their elected wards. Councillor Sammy Barry Mears, Highfield, Councillor Michela Capozzi, Tring East, Councillor Tony Cox, Apsley and Corner Hall, Councillor Claire Hobson, Boxmoor, Councillor Lara Pringle, North Church, Councillor Victoria Santa Maria, Hemel Hempstead Town, Councillor Carol Weston and Councillor Sharon Wilkie, both of Tring Central. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'll now invite the group leaders to give any apologies for absence on behalf of their groups. Councillor England.
Thank you, Mayor. I have apologies from Councillor Brian Patterson, from Councillor Robert Stewart and from Councillor Carrie Link.
Thank you. And Councillor Andrews.
Apologies on behalf of Councillor Elliott and Councillor Barradell.
Thank you. And yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. Sorry, Councillor Pesci.
I'll do it.
Sorry.
Councillors Mitchell and Hannell.
Thank you. And
I'll
also for the independents. Yeah.
I'll just submit apologies on behalf of Councillor Hobson.
Thank you. Right. I will also ask our Democratic Service Manager to confirm if we have any apologies. Oh yes, I've already done that. Sorry about that. Now to the first main item of business. Council needs to agree changes to the committee membership as published in the report pack. And I invite the leader, Councillor England, to introduce them and the changes to his cabinet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have appointed a new cabinet, which is myself as leader and place portfolio holder. Simi Dayani remains as housing portfolio holder. William Allen remains, Robin Bromham remains as Neighbourhood portfolio holder. William Allen moves over to corporate and commercial. And I welcome Caroline Smith-Wright to the what will be the joint portfolio for people, climate and transformation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, all of the other committees' places are taken as read in the report.
Thank you. Is there any comments? Sorry, Councillor Weston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I just say, I ask Councillor England, can you explain to the council why he was prepared to offer chair and vice chair seats on committees to Conservative and Labour councillors and has replaced all the ex-Lib Dem newly independent councillors and refused to allow them to retain their chair or vice chair positions, given that it can't have been based on proportional representation when there are only 4 Labour councillors compared to the 10 independents? Thank you.
Councillor England.
Yes, following advice from the monitoring officer, places were agreed on a proportional basis among the constituted groups of the council, and the remaining places were distributed, I think, by agreement among the 10 independents, or at least between 8 of the independents. I'm not aware that 2 of the independents were consulted initially, but that may have changed. So this was done in agreement with the Leader of the Opposition and with the Leader of the Labour Group.
Thank you. Councillor Pringle.
Yes, a question for the Leader. Is Councillor England aware of the provisions of Section 27 of the Equality Act 2010? And if he is not, let me just outline it. It means that if someone whose interests are covered by that act, such as women or those who support them, are treated less favourably because they have stood up for women who have been a victim of harassment or abuse, then that amounts to a breach of the Equality Act. And would Councillor England not agree that any such breach could bring him and the Council into disrepute?
Councillor England.
I'm proud to have been deputy leader of a group which was 50-50 male and female. I'm not aware that at any time I've considered the gender of the councillor as being either a qualification or a disqualification for any office, ever. A few years back, I suggested that there should be a joint deputy leadership of our group in opposition when I shared the deputy leadership on a job share basis with Sally Symington, but it wasn't done on the basis that that should be a male-female split. It was just that we were both relatively senior people in our group and able to provide leadership. So I mean, I don't know. I'm not aware of any time previously that the committee places and the chairs and the vice chairs have ever been worked out on the basis of gender. I'm just not aware of that ever having happened.
Thank you. Supplementary question. I'm afraid it appears that Councillor England has completely misunderstood or misinterpreted the question. Firstly, as a point of order, it was actually my suggestion that there should be a joint deputy leadership. However, that is irrelevant. What is relevant is the Equality Act 2010, Section 27. It is not a matter for Councillor England to determine whether that applies or not. It is a fact of law that it applies, and Councillor England is well aware that myself and the 7 other women who stood down in protest because of the treatment of women by Councillor England and the series of misjudgments that he's made that are discriminatory under the Equality Act. That is why we stood down. People have been removed from chairs and vice chairs. There are currently none amongst the 8 of us. That is disproportionate, and therefore it is disfavourable treatment and is in breach of the Equality Act. And I would advise Councillor England to take legal advice. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just clarify with Councillor England? As I understand it, as an independent and not a member of any group, we don't qualify under the proportionality clause. And so, since I became an independent councillor in 2017, I've never even considered that I might be a chair or a vice chair because I'm independent. And at County Council, that's exactly the same. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor England?
Thank you, Mayor. I confirm that's my understanding. I think it's really important that councillors, when they're not sure what the rules are, simply ask the monitoring officer, and that's what I did.
Thank you. Right. Could I ask if that is agreed? And is it a show of hands? Of course, agreed. Yeah. Is it agreed? Right. Thank you. Yeah. Right. Now to agenda item 4. I invite Councillor England
Excuse me, point of order, Chairman.
Sorry, I never called you. I'm so sorry.
I did want to ask another question.
Yes, go on then.
I wanted to ask Councillor England that since the administration, we have had very experienced experienced and knowledgeable councillors within the administration. I just wanted to understand from Councillor England why he has not used that experience. My other thought was, I'm extremely concerned that some of the cabinet positions have changed numerous amounts of times over the past 6 months. People and Transformation 3 times, Climate 3 times, although these have...
Sorry, order. It's not relevant, I don't think, in this.
I just wanted to find out what...
Could you ask in another time, maybe?
So, when you say point of order, Chairman, why is it... Can you explain what your point of order is, please?
Huh? I'm calling order to the meeting, not a point of order.
So are you saying I can't ask?
Well, we'd already... I'll let you speak, but I'm just... When the vote's already passed, it's irrelevant. I'm sorry about that.
Well, that's because you didn't see that I wanted to ask the question before the vote was passed.
Well, I don't think it would have made a difference.
No more comment. Thank you, Chairman.
Would it have made a difference? Can I call again? Oh, that's fine. Right. Right. Now to agenda item 4. I invite Councillor England to introduce the referrals from Cabinet.
Yeah, they're trying to name it,
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, my ModGov has just logged out, so I'm gonna just get back in.
Sorry?
But I have the script.
Yeah, point of order. You said you didn't look at it.
Yeah, I just need the votes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies for the hiatus. Item 4. The first cabinet referral is CA/91/24, 14th October, the local plan. Dacorum needs the local plan, and I will introduce that item now. Mayor, residents, a local plan is a protective instrument with which this council can set the bar for developers. Dacorum needs a local plan to protect all of our neighbourhoods. Who disagrees with that? Does anybody here not have houses in their ward which were built on farmers' fields? Is there anyone here who did not support the 2023 Reg 18? There are few events more important to a council than making a local plan. This plan will shape our communities for the next 15 years. For all the importance of us making a plan, there are few here who are happy about the imposed number of new homes. And yet, as the Dacorum Lib Dem manifesto said, we will plan the right homes in the right places. We are trying to do this, but we are a council, we are not a government. There are many, many examples of councils which have taken on governments and had local plans rejected. My colleagues and former colleagues alike supported this administration's earlier Reg 18 submission that reflected our electoral pledge to reduce the number of homes to 88% of our local assessed housing need. Let us not forget that the Reg 18 plan was voted on unanimously by us regardless of party. This plan, now tonight, is 13.6% different from that plan. Failure to agree a plan that is found sound would expose our borough to a tsunami of unwelcome, rogue and frankly abhorrent planning applications. This is already happening, and it will get worse if we do not do the brave and responsible thing and take this painful decision for our whole borough. Madam Mayor, I know we will hear some unhappy voices from members tonight and from the public who are reflecting the disappointment from all around the borough, from Tring, Berkhamsted, Hemel and all our villages. All are being asked to shoulder further growth than any of us wanted to ask of our communities. I respect that they will speak for loud voices in their wards, and it is right we take note of those issues so that we can look to accommodate them. But there is a housing crisis and we must plan for the needs of all our residents. The new Labour government is determined to tackle the housing crisis, a thing all major political parties acknowledged during the general election in July. The new government's decision to give us a target of 1,313 houses per annum is hard to argue against in the light of this national position. It is a human right for our fellow citizens to enjoy somewhere to call home. After all, post-war, we helped as much as any other community to house many of the displaced Londoners in this Hemel town. This will not stop me from saying, while it's our duty to do our fair share, the new mandatory numbers are unfair. The government must meet a substantial portion of the price for forcing such a number on us. Time is limited, so I will leave colleagues from all parties to talk about specific sites in the plan. While these discussions are important, the plan is not just about locations. It is about policies and a plan for services, employment and leisure too. If we must deliver these numbers, we will be uncompromising in our expectations from developers and house builders alike. We will demand the best in design, placemaking and landscaping. We will not tolerate value engineering and the provision of poor quality homes as places to live. We will expect the achievement of the highest level of biodiversity net gain. Climate change must be recognised with carbon neutral methods used in construction. We want all the new homes to blend and complement the existing ones, and for our communities to enjoy new facilities. We expect developers to work with town and parish councils, as well as the borough, to enhance each local sense of place and belonging. New communities must be connected by buses and paths and cycle paths that give access to those who need help with mobility. We have to get all of our settlements working better, people able to move around and not be stuck in traffic. Nobody must be left behind. So, to all the developers, I say, we will work with you. You can actually make money, and indeed you can make your reputation in Dacorum. But be in no doubt, we want the best for our residents of today and those of the future. Every acre is precious, and we want our residents to benefit every bit as your shareholders and landowners. Fairness for all involved will be our goal, and you have been given notice. It is non-negotiable. Come here, do your best work, leave a legacy and be proud of your work, as nothing less will be accepted by this council. We are not the only local authority with responsibility for the delivery of this local plan, as a number of our residents have made clear in their communications to officers, myself and other colleagues in the chamber this evening. We need the infrastructure to make this work, and the responsibility for our roads, pavements, bus services and any number of other things are all those of the Hertfordshire County Council. I know our officers have been working with county officers as part of the Reg 19 process. We all look for the county to play its role. As a county councillor myself, one of perhaps 7 or 8 in this room, I know their financial pressure on county is no less challenging as the pressures on us. We will work with the county to lobby government for the funding where it is needed, but we expect our colleagues at County Hall to do their part, to find the investment and work as hard as our officers to make this happen. We will not let them overlook our communities by jeopardising this plan through inactivity or neglect. I know from my colleagues and former colleagues in Tring that we will want to see more bus services and improvements to pavements and roads to allow existing residents and new residents to move around better than they can do today. Of course, some of the existing residents may well be the daughters and sons of existing residents. Others have told me that the roads are already at capacity, and I have no reason to doubt them. All these issues now need to be addressed by the county, and I hope that the inspector, in their examination of the plan in public, will challenge the county to answer all these issues. Our uncompromising expectations must not be limited to house builders. There are many important public agencies that will be looking for their investment and support. We have been discussing and debating a new facility in the heart of the town centre on the Old Market Square site. I want us to challenge the new government to make these plans possible. We need to support the work of our officers for Hemel Hempstead Town Centre and revive the population's heart. 80% of the population are in Hemel, and we need to give back a place to visit and enjoy tactile shopping for leisure and social congregating. I've lived in Hemel since 1996, and I first stood approximately at this place when watching Suzanne Vega at the old pavilion that stood at this site. I want us to have a local plan, in part so that we can have an infrastructure foundation on which to look at how we bring back live entertainment. We will rightly hear from those of my colleagues from Tring particularly who feel the burden has been heavy on them with additional sites. My colleagues in Berkhamsted do not feel any less unhappy. I respect all the concerns that we will hear. I've read every email that's been sent to me up until about the middle of this morning. The burden is not insignificant for anyone. This plan is the right plan to protect our communities from uncontrolled development. It's also a good plan for looking at how we can shape our borough for the better in coming years, how we can stand up and ensure that we get what is right. Better roads, better services, better health services, better opportunities for our young when they need homes. And we can also look to improve our town and village centres so they're even better places to live than they are today. We should not lose sight of the fact that our borough needs to improve and continue to focus on giving our residents the best quality of life. For those who remain adamant this plan is wrong, I ask you to register on Let's Talk Dacorum with us to make your views known during the forthcoming consultation. The plan is now ready to be consulted upon. I commend it to you and ask all my councillors, even with heavy hearts, to support the plan, as our qualified, experienced, knowledgeable officers have professionally recommended us to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, have we got a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I want to thank all the residents attending today. We're here tonight to discuss something that's crucial to the future of our borough, the local plan. I understand that many of us feel uncertain about it, and some want to reject it. I understand that many of us feel uncertain about it and reject it. But I want to be clear. This plan is about giving us control over how we grow and ensure that growth benefits everyone. First and foremost, the government has set us a new housing target. As Councillor England mentioned, it's 1,313 homes per year. This is a significant challenge as it is. However, we have the opportunity to set the plan now, which can be 1,016 homes per year instead. But if we fail to do this, we will be set back and will have to accommodate a new figure if we take more time. At the Regulation 18 stage, we propose 894 homes per year. But this will fail under the government's new target. It would not move forward. Delaying or rejecting this plan won't remove the housing target. And without a local plan in place, development will continue anyway. But without the necessary infrastructure, that's the future I know none of us want here. But this isn't just about numbers. It's about planning for the right homes in the right place with the infrastructure to support them. This local plan gives us the opportunity to address these requirements head on. I never wanted to be in this position of proposing a far large number of new homes. I didn't want it for this government. I never voted for them. And it's not my choice. But we are all in this position. The consequences are too great if we don't support local plan and don't support this legal framework, which is, again, a local plan. We need more homes. That is a fact. And I sit on a housing community and I see the pressures. Our community is growing. We're all enjoying longer lives and our youngs are struggling to find homes, the homes they can afford. We have over 1,500 people who need social housing to secure a roof over their heads. This plan will give us that housing stock and change the lives of those who most need those housing. There is already a huge strain on council housing services to provide temporary accommodation. It's no way for families to live. I know that residents across Tring and Berkhamsted and in many of our towns and villages are worried about the impact of more housing. But the point of this plan is to ensure that housing comes with the services that supports the housing. Without a local plan, we lose the ability to control where and how development is going to happen. And let me be clear, if we don't pass this plan, development will still happen, just without the safeguards. I have been clear to our officers that new homes must meet the needs of our communities, and we're here to advocate for that. I want to see affordable family homes. I want to see accessible homes. I want to see homes for disabled, and I want to see smaller family homes for young professionals. Infrastructure is the key to this plan. And if we don't provide the infrastructure to deliver these homes, we won't succeed. Many residents have said we don't have the infrastructure required, and that is true. It is for us to hold our county council on account to provide the infrastructure that supports home, but that can only be done if we have local plan in place. I also want to address the concern that some councillors may feel pressure to vote against this plan because they've heard from residents, so do I, who already have homes and they don't want to build anymore. But our responsibility is to all residents, for all those young families who are soon going to be seeking their own homes, who are already on housing register waiting long enough to find those homes, including those who don't have homes yet, who are on waiting list, or who can't afford the housing that currently is available. We owe it to them to plan for their future. This isn't about undermining our residents' voice at all. It's about recognizing the reality we're in and taking control of it. The consequences of rejecting this plan are real. We could face more homes, more pressure on services, and less land to work with if we delay this. Instead, I want to see thoughtful plan development that delivers the homes we need.
Sorry, time's up.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No worries, thank you.
I now would like to open the floor for a debate. Sorry? Oh, sorry. Yes, I forgot that bit. I would remind members that once you've spoken, you have no further right of reply and no speech should exceed 5 minutes. Right, I'll open the floor now. And the first person, Councillor Weston.
Thank you, Lady Mayor. With regards to the local plan, I want to remind all councillors here, no matter which party you stand for, in 2023 at full council, each councillor voted the Reg 18 and had the support of many residents. As a ward member of Tring Central, I have received 600 plus emails from residents that I represent. They do not support the Reg 19 and the proposed site at Marshcroft. I will not be voting for this motion as I believe we need to make a stand and show the new government we mean business and stick to the Reg 18, the same as St Albans. I would like to remind all councillors here that your residents are expecting you to support them. They are the people that have put you in the position for your respective wards. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We all knew this was going to get harder and harder. In fact, the incoming new Labour government took the previous government's advisory targets, made them mandatory and ratcheted them higher. That is the one true cause of the situation the council's in. Now, as I explained at this point last year, I had a number of quite serious reservations even with the Regulation 18 consultation version of the local plan, because there were a number of problems. Now, I won't go into listing them all now, but they did focus predominantly on the deliverability of the plan in terms of how likely the sites were to happen, which is a critical consideration when these local plans are examined at the inquiry stage by the planning inspectorate. Now, I'm kind of forced to leave it to others to debate the numbers and the reality of the situation the council's in. But I have to focus on one of the sites in particular because I was first elected 25 years ago to fight a particular site in my ward, which is a very controversial site, and I received significant electoral support over the years to prevent that site from happening. And I'm referring to the Shendish Manor and Chiltern Hunt site. Now, as I mentioned at the scrutiny meeting, that site's quite unusual because it actually conflicts with every purpose there is of the Green Belt. And I will be taking part in the Regulation 19 consultation, as I hope everybody present in the room will as well. And I'll be taking part in the inquiry as well, because I do feel that there's arguments to prevent that site. But it puts me in a difficult position because I have to represent my constituents who have given me strong support over the years. And for that reason, I can't support this Regulation 19 version of the local plan and will be voting against. Finally, Mayor, before I sit down, just to advise members, and perhaps I should have done this under a point of order earlier, there are 3 categories where members of the council do not have to declare interest and can continue to take part in debates. One of them is council tax, 2 of them is housing tenancies, and 3 is living next to local planned sites. So it was not a valid reason for declaring an interest, Madam Mayor.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a difficult decision. This council needs an up-to-date local plan with a 5-year housing supply. Otherwise, developments like the Fairfax application, the predatory Fairfax application between Gadebridge and Pickett's End, which is currently subject to planning appeal after being refused by this council, will happen without this council being able to do anything about it. If we don't have a local plan with a 5-year housing supply, developers will have carte blanche to build what they like, where they like, when they like, and we will be powerless to stop predatory applications. I understand how there's only a small window to get through the local plan with 1,016 dwellings per annum. If we delay, the imposed Labour government target of 1,313 dwellings per annum will be imposed upon us. However, I have deep concern about this local plan. It involves the release of Greenbelt at Polehanger Lane in Gadebridge for housing. This Greenbelt performs highly in its aims of protecting the countryside from encroachment and of preventing settlements from merging into each other. In this case, preventing the settlements of Hemel Hempstead and Potton End merging into each other. On Hertfordshire County Council, I represent Hemel Hempstead North West, which includes not just Chawton and Warner's End and West Boxmoor, but also Gadebridge. I owe it to my county constituents in Gadebridge to protect their green lung. Therefore, I cannot support this local plan.
Thank you. Councillor Santa Maria.
Thank you, Mayor. I have received more emails on this subject than any other in my time as a councillor, and I see more residents present tonight than at any meeting I have attended. The strength of feeling around this plan is unmatched. I work for a leading legal advice charity, and I am as committed as anyone in the room to providing an adequate supply of social and affordable housing. However, this cannot be done with a gun to our heads at the cost of the well-being of our residents. To support this plan would ignore this laudable political activism and give people the impression that I think I know better than the people of Tring, Berkhamsted, Hemel Hempstead and our villages what is right for them. I cannot support this plan as a matter of principle.
Thank you. Order. Councillor Sammy Berry-Mears.
Thank you, Mayor. November 2020, the 19th. Some things need to be hurried and some things just don't. For some reason, giving the public just one shot at a moving target, Tories at last night pushed ahead with the process to run a Regulation 18 almost immediately. Come on, Hemel, let's hear from you. With developers queuing to build exec houses and posh flats on Greenbelt, increasing transportation congestion, we want to keep the green space where growth is needed, improve our housing quality, with properly affordable housing for people on the waiting list and a town with great and distinctive leisure options worthy of growth in housing and jobs. Someone I thought was a very wise man wrote those words back in 2020. And then this year, a new local plan which responds to feedback, protects Greenbelt, gets a great deal for Hemel's reinvention and gives residents control over developers. Again, written by somebody I have great respect for and a reason why a lot of us got elected. There is no point in us standing here and doing this job if we can't say we will try for our residents. And I'm incredibly disappointed to hear that that's what's being suggested. Though I don't like phrases, but, you know, gun to our head, we were pretty much told you've got to vote for this, there's no other choice. We have other areas which are pushing ahead, St Albans, much lower target. This also doesn't consider the St Albans plan, which does have to be considered with ours. I think it's Aston Clinton, which backs onto Tring, which also have to have a huge uptake in housing. We're losing green space, not just in the borough, not just in our county, but around. And our residents can't have that. We can't have that. And I'm just asking, really, everyone who has a vote here to think based on what we were elected on. We were elected to represent our residents. And sometimes that means making really hard decisions and going against what we think we have to do because an officer told us or somebody told us or the new Labour government told us. But is that not the Labour government that most people here support? So I'm obviously not agreeing with this.
Councillor Posey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I was canvassing ahead of the May 23 elections to stand as Borough Councillor for Tring East, I was met with a mixture of responses from the residents I spoke to. Some said they had always voted a Conservative and wouldn't be changing. Some said they voted Conservative in a general election but would vote Lib Dem locally as they had seen how active their local councillors were and because they recognised how hard those Lib Dem councillors had fought to stop the Marshcroft development. And then there were those who said they weren't going to vote at all because what's the point? You're all the same. Say one thing, do another. It was this last statement that impacted me the most. I didn't like that I was being stereotyped as someone untrustworthy with little to no integrity just because I was standing as a local councillor. and hadn't even had a chance to prove them right or wrong. We were just all the same in their eyes. So I assured those residents that I would be joining my then Lib Dem colleagues to continue the fight against developing on Greenbelt and making sure we built the right homes in the right place. We committed to rewriting the local plan when we won the election, and that is what we did. In October 23, this council unanimously agreed the new Reg 18 local plan was the right plan for Dacorum. We proceeded to Reg 19 with confidence that we were doing the best for our residents. A new Labour government was always going to bring changes to house building targets and the planning framework. But what hasn't changed is Dacorum and what is right for our area and our residents. It is our responsibility to stand strong and fight against plans to allow development on Greenbelt. Our Reg 18 local plan is a strong proposal for new homes and infrastructure in Dacorum. I understand why officers are recommending we make the changes to the Reg 19 to offer more homes in response to Labour's plans for house building. But there are still so many unanswered questions about Labour's plans that this new proposal that makes this new proposal feel like we're jumping the gun. As councillors, it is our responsibility to take the officers' recommendations and weigh them up against our manifesto and promises to our residents. This isn't an easy decision, and saying the Labour government are making us do it is not acceptable at this time. It is a responsibility of this council to fight for what is right for Dacorum. We must do what we told our residents we will do. Those that don't will have earned the reputation they have. We urgently need a local plan in place to stop predatory development, but that doesn't mean we settle for anything less than what we believe is right. To quote Councillor England in a meeting on the 17th of September, if you take on the Labour government, you are very, very brave. Well, I think my actions 2 weeks ago show that I am brave, and I won't back down when I see something wrong, and therefore I shall not be voting for this Reg 19 proposal.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Johnson. Thank you. You could hear me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I only have 2 points I want to add in relation to the points that Councillor Anderson has made. Firstly, as councillors, we are often accused of ignoring the wishes of our constituents. So a few years ago, Kings Langley Parish Council carried out a parish poll and asked the question, do you believe the Greenbelt in and around your parish should be developed as is being considered in the Dacorum local plan? More than 99% voted against the statement and just 13 people voted in favour. In January of last year, Kings Langley got approval for its neighbourhood plan after 3 years' hard work. Less than 18 months later, a planning inspector ignored that neighbourhood plan in its entirety and decided to approve 135 houses and flats on Greenbelt in Kings Langley. For those who don't know, neighbourhood plans should form part of the statutory development plan for our village, but this too seems to have been given scant regard when including Shendish in the additional sites. I do appreciate the dilemma that the council is facing, but on a matter of principle, I cannot support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith-Wright.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand your concerns, and I share them deeply. We are faced with an incredible, challenging decision, and the path before us is not black and white. However, I believe we must act in the interest of our community, both in the short term and for future generations. Without a local plan, we will remain under constant siege from speculative development, and I know that. In my ward in Tring Rural, I have spent countless hours fighting off planning applications, doing everything possible to protect the green spaces we hold dear. But the truth is, without a local plan, we lack the proper tools for our defence. We need this plan to protect our greenbelt and our communities. from unchecked development. None of us want Marshcroft. I certainly don't. But this is where we find ourselves. The new government has moved swiftly, mandating rapid housing expansion. If we fail to take control with a local plan, the government will intervene and push through development without our input or our say in shaping it. We could walk away now, hoping to save face in the short term. That would be irresponsible. It would leave our residents and our environment even more vulnerable to piecemeal, unplanned development. We must act as a proactive, preventative council. Without a local plan, our green belt could be eroded, with no thought for the long-term impact on our communities. With this plan, we gain control. We will be in a position to demand the infrastructure our residents need: GPs, schools, leisure facilities, efficient transport, sustainable housing, better roads, and even green spaces. I would like our borough to be known as the gold standard in sustainable building. This is not about houses, it's about building sustainable communities where future generations can thrive. I stand here today in support of the local plan because I believe it offers the best protection for our residents and our environment. This isn't about turning our backs on the green belt or being blind to the challenges ahead. It's about navigating a difficult path and making the best out of an impossible situation. I know this is painful and difficult for all of us, but I believe we must rise to the occasion, turn this challenge into an opportunity, and shape the future of our borough. I urge you to support this local plan with me. Thank you.
Yeah. Right, sorry, could I ask Dell if you can respond to Councillor Anderson's comment? Yes?
Right. Councillor Anderson stated that with regards to the local plans that councillors don't need to declare their interest. It's only matters relating to council tax and housing where councillors are council tenant that they do not need to declare an interest, but with regard to the local plan, they do need to declare an interest.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Madden.
Thank you. We're in a very difficult position. This new town was built when only around 50% of homes had one car, and now most of them have got 2, 3 or 4. St Albans District Council have decided to dump their housing allocation on us, and here we come with Hemel Hempstead East, where thousands of homes are going to be built over there between Dacorum and St Albans, but in Hemel. We're going to get all the headache, and they're going to get half the council tax. If we don't push this through, it will open floodgates for even more development on the edges of our town, and it will be an absolute free-for-all for all the developers. I will be supporting my residents in Nash Mills and Hemel South East, as we've been urged to by Councillor Weston. If we don't get this through, the green belt between Nash Mills that separates Dacorum from Three Rivers will disappear. It's a very bitter pill to swallow, but in my eyes, it's the least bad option, and I will be voting to support.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Timmis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate that the council is in a difficult place with the new Labour government threatening to impose impossible housing numbers. But I think we should not capitulate, but challenge and stick with our agreed 2023 plan. I have always opposed the sacrifice, not the release, note, but the sacrifice of the green belt. And just a rough calculation of the Hemel Garden communities, which is already a done deal, and the new proposed Marshcroft, etc., areas of Greenbelt, we're at the moment looking at sacrificing 2,385 acres. So for that reason, amongst others, I will not be supporting this.
Councillor Symington. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Colleagues, members of the public, thank you for coming. I appreciate this is an incredibly difficult decision for the Council. The change of government in July, along with it, firstly, a move to the mandatory housing numbers, and then a 30% increase in Dacorum's housing needs to 1,313 per annum, have put a huge pressure on the local plan process. To meet even the lower number prescribed by the previous government of 1,060 has required some quick movements to find sites to make up the shortfall on the previous Regulation 18 numbers agreed by this Council in 2023. There is no doubt that nationally we need more housing, and importantly, that we need more affordable housing built to high standards that are sustainable both to live in and to maintain. But, as has been said many times, we need the right homes in the right places. We also need the infrastructure to support the new developments, and the lack of suitable infrastructure is a refrain we hear repeatedly from all our residents. Along with all of you, I've received many emails opposing changes to the local plan. Not the 600 that Carol has, but at the time of leaving for this meeting, I had 280. Over 85% of these emails related to the inclusion of Marshcroft and New Mill in the local plan. But as the ward councillor for Berkhamsted West, I have also received correspondence relating to the inclusion of the British Film Institute site and the Haslam Field. Both these sites will add very considerable traffic congestion along Shooters Way and Kings Hill Way, and neither has a viable walking or cycling route into Berkhamsted town centre. As such, they are ill-conceived additions to the local plan and rejected only last year. In Tring, the quantum of proposed new building is of a scale to overwhelm the existing historic market town and damage the adjacent area of outstanding natural beauty, now renamed the Chiltern Natural Landscapes. Not only have I received huge email inbox of correspondence, but I have had residents phone and leave messages to say their mental health has been affected and they cannot sleep at night. This is impacting everybody. Last year, I spoke on behalf of Tring residents at the Marshcroft appeal. The Secretary of State agreed, and I quote from the document following that, the Secretary of State agrees with the inspector that the proposal, the Marshcroft proposal, would result in significant harm to the Greenbelt. To check the unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas and Greenbelt Purpose C to assist in safeguarding the countryside from encroachment. The Chiltern Conservation Board, of which I am the Dacorum Borough representative, has advised me, while in many respects, and I quote, the draft plan's consideration of the national landscape is exemplary, that being the AONB, we do believe that it falls significantly short of complying both with the National Planning Policy Framework and the strengthened 85 duty to further the purpose of conserving and enhancing the natural beauty of the area when it comes to A, the overall quantum of growth for Dacorum, and B, the allocation of major development sites in the setting of the national landscape. Residents in their emails have also raised the possible inclusion of the land east of Tring, Marshcroft, in the Chiltern National Landscape when the boundary changes are considered next January. To this, the Chiltern Conservation Board has responded to me. We consider that the existing NPPF policies, combined with the strengthened duty, are sufficient for the land east of Tring and similar setting proposals in Dacorum to be rejected, even without additional land in those areas being designated under the boundary review. Like other councillors, I'm also in a very difficult position. But like the rest of you, I also put my residents first. Given the inappropriate development in both Berkhamsted West, due to the constrained infrastructure, and Tring, due to the size of the proposed development and impact on the green belt and Chiltern National Landscape, I do not support the hastily conceived local plan Regulation 19 in its current form, and I will be voting against it.
Councillor Bronham. Thank you. Councillor Bronham.
Thank you. So we want to keep control of developments in our borough so we can represent our residents. We want to stay on the rails. We want schools, surgeries, infrastructure, good stewardship, all brought forward. So it's not, we want infrastructure first. We want energy efficiency regarding to improve the cost of living, to benefit the environment, to mitigate climate change. We want design for sustainable travel, for convenient public transport, cycling and walking networks. We want to reduce reliance on cars. We want more accessible open space for people's health and mental health and for biodiversity. We want to limit housing densities in sensitive areas in particular, especially around stations and so on, which don't have dense allocations at the moment. We want affordable housing, especially for the elderly and for the young, not just the types of development which are optimised to maximise profit for the developers. Our previous plan was for 916 dwellings per year, but with the new Labour government, which was democratically elected, we now have a requirement for 1,313, but we do have an opportunity to comply with the Conservative government's requirement of 1,016 dwellings per annum. Even with the release of green belt areas shown in the plan, the 1,016 per year can only just be achieved. Brownfield land would not accommodate the prescribed number of dwellings, even with high tower blocks. A plan with less than the 1,016 of the previous government would be a futile protest and a choice to not have a local plan. The UK government would take over, we've been assured, and they would have the objective of building 1,313 dwellings per annum. So the sites which are currently allocated would probably have much higher density and more sites would be added. And more green belt would be lost. We must use this limited time window to stay in control, save as much green belt as possible, and provide the best possible developments for everybody in Dacorum.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Last year, when we did the Reg 18 plan, we confidently expected that the plan would proceed smoothly to become Reg 19. But as we now know, we have been overtaken by events, and that Reg 18 plan would not stand up to scrutiny. I do have some strong concerns and reservations about the implications for all our settlements and neighbourhoods. However, as someone who has been closely involved with planning matters in our area for around 30 years, it is untenable to find that developers are increasingly able to ride roughshod over our policies as the current plan is not fit for purpose. You've heard this from Councillor Anderson, and I know Berkhamsted residents will want to know that their concerns are understood and articulated. For the Reg 18 plan last year, when the focus was on the site BK01, this is the top of Swingate Lane, we had a working group assemble a response. This is from the Town Council and a group of the parties within Berkhamsted. The plan itself is now part of the emerging work that we are doing for our neighbourhood plan, and it's published on our website. And part of the document says, on site, as congestion and access is one of the town's major issues, let me just read some of the text that we included. The site access will require a new road between Chesham Road and Swingate Lane, built to adopted highway standard, with separate footway and cycleways. Further measures are necessary to provide convenient non-car access to the town centre and station. There is nothing in the plan that addresses that, and it's still not yet addressed. It's vital to proceed development, we went on, with a wider area transport study to inform introduction of measures to calm or exclude additional traffic, especially on Swingate Lane, and a master plan is required for the site and areas. Now that we find that further sites on Shooters Way are reintroduced into a scheme, the transport study with the documents will be closely scrutinised, as it already is in some quarters. Now, defending the Green Belt has been an article of faith across all councils and parties. But the reality is that it's becoming harder, with the ministry redefining and weakening what is the role for Green Belt and under what circumstances it can be redesignated or eroded. This was reflected following the Marshcroft appeal. Ordinarily, the inspector's judgment would have been final. With the new government, in my opinion, it would be most unlikely that the ministry would overturn a similar appeal. Across the country, residents have a common cause when large-scale development is proposed. Infrastructure, GP services, transport, congestion, lack of community and other facilities are high on the list of issues. The trouble is that piecemeal development is at the root of the problem. New build is piggybacking on the current infrastructure and bringing no material improvements to the community. I buy into the idea that only larger scale sites can attract additional facilities and investment, provided we have the policies to determine what goes into the master plan and insist that developers stick to them and our officers are empowered to do just that. But first, we need a plan that meets our housing needs, especially to deliver social housing and the economic and other benefits envisaged in our corporate plan. Not to beat about the bush, I shall be voting in support of the emerging plan, and I encourage councillors to vote in support.
Thank you. Councillor Azaliki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The local plan is not just for today, but a plan that will affect generations to come. The protection of the green belt and the environment is our moral obligation. The wards that I represent are fortunate to be surrounded by and within the green belt, and I will fight tooth and nail to protect it. At the last election, the administration pledged to protect the green belt. Today we are looking at broken promises. I will therefore not be supporting the local plan.
Okay. Councillor White-Low.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't intending to speak on this debate. I represent Woodall Farm, which is going to be hugely affected by the Hemel Hempstead, Hemel Garden Communities expansion. I abhor the huge expansions being thrust upon us, the loss of green belt and green fields. However, we need to protect the wider community of Dacorum against the unbridled opportunism of developers and a government which is determined to do what it wants in our area, despite our very best intentions. I will be voting to adopt the local plan tonight because I believe it will afford some protection for the whole community. I will be doing it through absolutely gritted teeth. I feel sick to my stomach about what is being done to our community. I'm sick to my stomach by what is being done to our community by the Labour government. But I feel there is no other way of protecting the community from what is being suggested. Thank you.
Can we please have some quiet at the back? You're not allowed to talk, so that is one thing in the Constitution anyway, so Anyway, the next one is Councillor Pringle.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And I would thank Councillor Anderson for his earlier intervention on the Constitution, because democracy isn't just to be done, it's to be seen to be done. And I think people here tonight are very dismayed that Councillor Reynolds and Councillor Wilkie have effectively been gagged by quite a nefarious decision. However, moving on to the broader concept of democracy, I would urge Councillor Whitelow to have another think before she casts her vote if she really does feel it's through gritted teeth. Because going back to winter 2019 to 2020, when we were just entering the first lockdown, there was, of course, the previous consultation on the local plan, which also proposed building all over the green belt. And it was during that time that residents who weren't able to come to public meetings communicated in a new way through Zoom meetings and through literally writing their views on pieces of paper. I got so many views through my door, and it made me quite emotional because it really was the views of the community. People really care about the green belt. Centenarians who probably are not still with us were writing lengthy letters to me, agreeing that once it's gone forever, and they wanted their grandchildren and generations yet to come to be able to enjoy the green space that was the backdrop of their life. And that is what is going to happen if we go ahead with this overdevelopment of Tring. Of course, it will affect North Church, as will the development on Shooters Lane. They will affect children, and I've been a long-standing road traffic campaigner, but this isn't just about one ward. And I would suggest that any councillor who says that they only stand for their ward and doesn't stand for the whole of Dacorum needs to reflect on why they're here. We are one community. We do not play pork barrel politics and negotiate about things like that. The green belt is far too important. It's a shame that Councillor Wilkie, who has devoted so much of her time and expertise to bringing forward the Section 18 plan, which had almost universal support, has not been able to speak on it. And I would like to thank her on behalf of my residents and all the other residents for the painstaking, dedicated work that she has put in, only to have the portfolio removed from her by Councillor England, who has imposed a deeply unpopular and unthought through plan for the Section 19. And what I would say about democracy is, remember back in 2020, we said, once it's gone forever. We said, we want the right houses in the right places for local people and key workers, affordable housing. That was said here. I remember working with previous councillor Liz Utley, who again, another woman who was hardworking and dedicated to purpose, drilled down on those numbers, and we pushed back against the local plan at that time. We pushed back to the extent that not only did the Secretary of State start reviewing his policies, but that very same slogan was used in the Chesham and Amersham by-election, which the Liberal Democrats won. They copied what we did in Dacorum. We have a role. We, as local government, are not just an administrative arm of central government. The reason you elect us is to push back. It is quite right that the officers give us advice, but it is also right that we should have the courage to stand up for our communities and not hastily capitulate. I don't understand it. There hasn't been debate. It has been imposed. Councillors have been silenced. This is not acceptable. And may I remind you, I also stood in 2021 county election, and I know that it was one of the issues I campaigned on, saving the green belt, even though technically it is a borough issue, but people understood that they could show how they felt. And I got huge support, as did Councillor Taylor in Berkhamsted, who is up for re-election next year and hasn't yet spoken in the debate. It would be very interesting to hear where he stands on this. So I am definitely voting against this. I think it's undemocratic. I think we've, even in this year, in February 2024, when we won the by-election, in Tring Rural, people were bringing it up on the doorsteps and were voting for their new
Time's up.
councillor on that basis.
Sorry, time's up.
I'm voting against, thank you.
Councillor Friedman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and I just acknowledge your challenges in chairing this evening's
Yes,
meeting.
exactly.
I think you and officers are doing great. The last few months have been extremely active for myself, and I'm sure for all of my councillor colleagues. There's been a lot of information and submissions we've had to digest, and whilst tonight's decision is by no means an easy one, I'm fairly confident it will be a well-informed one. I'd like to thank everybody, from the interested residents who responded to the 2023 consultation and to those who've contacted me in recent months, both supportive and in vehement objection to the proposals under consideration tonight. I'd like to thank the officers and the experts who've attempted to navigate the rapidly changing situation at central government and have gone to great lengths to explain the ramifications and consequences of these to myself and colleagues. I'd also like to thank colleagues from across party lines who've shared their experience and expertise in all things local plan to help us come to our decision tonight. For my part, I will be voting for the local plan. While I recognise it proposes a situation far less desirable from the one the Liberal Democrat Party were actively promoting in 2023, the external environment has changed. There's no denying of that. And unfortunately, our least worst case scenario is much worse than we had previously consulted on. In many ways, Dacorum has been afflicted with extremely inopportune timing. But even in hindsight, the expertise and advice the councillors were listening to simply did not consider such a rapid change of the framework policy, the Labour government, or the emergency recruitment of central government planning officers to subsume planning powers from the local authorities to be relevant, as we felt our plan would be submitted well before those changes were tabled. To all the public of Dacorum, and I think I speak for a number of fellow councillors, I'm sorry. I was naive, I was optimistic, and we were mistaken. I come back to the least worst case scenario. It's my belief that for the entire borough of Dacorum and all of our residents, we'll be in a much worse situation without a valid local plan than we would be with one. My decision on this plan distills to the consideration of whether any other alternative plan with a feasible chance of success could be adopted. Given the external environment I mentioned earlier, any hypothetical alternative plan would need to comply with the new national planning policy framework, which in my opinion would result in a vastly inferior outcome for our borough. I wish to state publicly my demand on behalf of my neighbours in Berkhamsted that in order to address some of the shortcomings and poor delivery of previous developments in the area and to better address the disruptions the developers cause to residents, that I will be pushing for a scaling increase in the resourcing of the council's planning enforcement team during the application of this plan. I want to see enforcement officers holding developers to account to minimise disruption, keep our public streets and footpaths clear, and to require the prompt repair of public areas damaged during construction, and to obligate developers to follow a responsible construction management plan. I hope in all future discussions of council budget priorities that my colleagues from across the floor will support me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tyndall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, can I say that I recognise the sincerity and the way in which every councillor to date has spoken, both on behalf of their communities and also of the borough. But as a historian, I'm disappointed that many have not realised that the world changed in July. From a government that was tenuously occupying the place over a number of years, to one which has a huge majority, we now faced with 5 years of a government that if it wants to do something, it will. And I believe that any other course of action than what is proposed tonight would actually put our borough seriously at risk. I'm old enough to remember the Clay Cross dispute in the 1970s. Now, there's not a lot of you around who remember that. That was when an urban council in Derbyshire took on the government in 1972 and would not impose increases in rents despite the government insisting. Commissioners were sent in, there was known cooperation, no staff wanted to work with anybody else, but in 2 years there was total chaos, and then suddenly the Urban Council disappeared in reorganisation and it lost its total identity completely. That's what a government can do if it wants to. So I would suggest that we all think very carefully about what happened in Claycross, the confusion and the absolute chaos that was caused for a number of years to the detriment of residents and everybody else. I'm not very keen on this. There are a number of areas that I'm concerned about, but I'm not going to voice them tonight. It's not the place. What I'm saying is that we have got a government which has required us to do something, and if we don't do it, they will send in the commissioners. And I feel that we have no choice, and I'm like Colette Whitelow, sick that we've got to be forced into this situation, but I would urge everybody to think about what the situation will be if we don't carry this vote tonight. What will happen is that we will not have a local plan. I'm sure there'll be a queue of developers at James Doe's door tomorrow morning, all with their nice little plans in their hands, ready to make planning applications, which we will not be able to fight off. We have to have a local plan. Unfortunately, we have to follow the government guidelines. We haven't got any alternative. So I'm afraid, while I'm also not very keen on it, I should be supporting this as well.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're in an invidious situation, which brings to mind the old joke, how would you get to Regulation 19? Well, I wouldn't start from here. Our well-negotiated, consulted on, and unanimously approved Regulation 18 has become bypassed by the 30% targets of the Labour government that we've heard a lot about. We have three choices. Stick to Regulation 18, but as Councillor Anderson informed us at Strategic Planning Committee, no local authority has ever had a local plan accepted under number. Pursuing that pathway would lead us to having to take on the 30% extra required by the government. We've been called upon to redo the Regulation 18 with the additional sites in. This would take 2 years and would necessarily involve taking on the 30% extra, because we would lose the window in which we can still benefit from the National Planning Policy Framework version 3. And this worst case scenario would lead to developer-driven or our planning being managed by central government, who are already recruiting planners to be able to respond to local authorities who do not toe the line. I think we need to bear in mind that to not build on Marshcroft, to protect Marshcroft, which I'm sure anybody in the room would rather do, means we need to find 4 sites of a scale of Marshcroft. That's West Berkhamsted, that's Gatebridge, Nash Mills Borders, who knows where else. Or we can approve this Regulation 19 consultation. We've been asked to stand up for Greenbelt. We are 4,500 additional houses, the extra 30%, is an awful lot of Greenbelt. Where do we build these 3 extra Marshcrofts? We've been asked to stand up to government, and we've heard that they are resolute and are bringing mandatory targets. We've been asked to find grey belt sites. We are. Officers have interpreted that the government's new guidance on grey belt means that Shendish, Dunsley Farm, British Film Institute, and others would fall under grey belt. Apsley, Boxmoor Gasworks, Hemel Hempstead Station, They are already in the plan to be built on very significantly, and local residents there are not entirely happy about it. We've been exhorted to build upwards, 6,000 units going upwards rather than outwards. Just think about it, that's an awful lot of flats. Where are we going to have those high-rise buildings? Can't all be done in central Hemel and Maylands. We've been asked to have courage. In 1854, the charge of the Light Brigade had courage, but what we need is sense. We need to act with good sense. I hate the timescales that we are having to work towards, meaning that we can't have a proper dialogue with residents. I hate that Tring is being imposed on with this extra housing. I hate that our fantastic Regulation 18 consultation is now untenable. But this emotion gets me nowhere. I shall be voting with my head, voting to save 4,500 homes worth of greenbelt, voting to protect local decision-making in Dacorum's planning, not government or developer-driven decision-making, and voting for the ability to get as good a deal as possible on infrastructure, environmental standards, and affordable and social housing for all our residents. And I encourage colleagues to do likewise.
Thank you. Councillor Gale. Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Mayor. Members and members of the public. Last year, I supported the draft local plan as it was then, and I did hope and thought at the time that it could be carried forward, despite having a housing allocation lower than the recommended number at the time. It is clear now, though, that the fact of the matter is that if that plan in its form were to be carried forward, it would be certain to be rejected and fail, leaving us without a plan, with the damaging uncertainty that that would bring, and eventually a new, likely greater target of 1,313 houses per year. This plan has a good chance, and it aims for 1,016 homes per year. I was initially inclined to say that the new local plan ought to be presented for another Regulation 18 consultation, but this would be the third Regulation 18 consultation. We are now a target for speculative development applications. We cannot go on any longer being such a target, at the end of which damaging uncertainty we will have to find space anyway for the new target of 1,313 homes. This local plan saves some 200 homes per year as it comes in at 1,016. We have to do what's best for Dacorum as a whole, and while it may be tempting to take a stand, this would be futile, and this is too important an issue to make such a gesture. Whichever way you slice this, this local plan is the only realistic way to minimise Dacorum's homes building obligations and protect us from disastrous piecemeal development, and so I will be supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I feel I have no alternative but to support this plan. Both the current and former governments have imposed housing targets on councils, both here and elsewhere, and a system that is developer-led. We do not have powers that we should have to control it. I represent Berkhamsted, a town which shows all the signs of a failure to plan. One main road and a spaghetti layout of other roads that cannot cope with traffic. Yet we can face a continuous barrage of developers who say, one more site won't make any difference. We then, we cannot deal, we need to be able to plan to provide the services we need for transport and schools, etc. We cannot deal with more speculative development. I was, however, extremely frustrated that when presented with this draft plan in competence initially, there was no alternative sites to the ones presented. We were given a list and said, take it or leave it. I had hoped and expected Marshcroft would be excluded. But to reject any site, we must offer an alternative site. And it is therefore extremely disturbing to find that Councillor Wilkie, the former portfolio holder for Place, who I had loyally supported in that post because I knew how much she cared about it, or I thought she did, had not prepared an alternative site to Marshcroft that we could have all have looked at and supported. Therefore, I have a choice. Do I defend my residents as best I can with the powers I have, or hand control over to faceless civil servants? We must also recognise that this system is broken. It is a developer's charter. They do not care about our community, and we should all be campaigning for a proper devolution of control of this system to councils so that we can decide which sites we want. We can also decide where we protect the green belt. I therefore urge you to support this motion, as I feel we've got really no choice but to do it, and to work towards a better system for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've been a councillor in this and other chambers in Dacorum for 37 years, many of those years at the most senior level as a member. I've worked on, 8 or so local plans. It certainly doesn't get any easier. And you can see from the passion in this room this evening, from members on all sides of the argument, and from those who are assembled behind us, and from the probably 700 emails I've had since last week. First of all, kicking off with a round robin to group leaders, and then followed by a more exhaustive list of councillors following last week's scrutiny. You could be forgiven for thinking, with the change from the Reg 18 to the Reg 19, that what we're facing this evening, and it's been said, it's been mentioned so many times, that we're almost facing a referendum on Marshcroft, because Marshcroft is the big change from the Reg 18. But it's wider than that, because this is an implication for the whole of Dacorum. We didn't, if you think back to the inquiry last year, convince the planning inspector that Marshcroft shouldn't be developed. In fact, the inspector fell on the side of developing the site. It's only the intervention of the Secretary of State. For whatever reason, the Secretary of State made a contrary decision to the planning inspector. And I'm sure if the Marshcroft farm was back in play now, the current Secretary of State wouldn't reach the same conclusion. I'm convinced, if this is an issue particularly around Marshcroft, although as I repeat, it's a bigger issue for the borough, that Marshcroft will be gone and consented whatever we decide this evening, whether we go for Reg 19 with it in or whether we leave it out and do something different. Because this will return the applicant, the landowner, has the benefit of a planning inspector's approval, and they will at some point submit another application, and the planning framework is shifting more in their favour. For whatever reason, the Conservative government and the Secretary of State handed down, through the standard methodology, a requirement for Dacorum to deliver 1,016. But given the arguments constantly within the Conservative Party at a national level, they never had the stomach to say, you have to do that. They fudged it that we had choices. And we came up with a plan of around 900 that satisfied most people. Not everybody, but it satisfied most people. Up until July the 4th, we were content that we were going to be able to achieve that and convince the inspector that Dacorum couldn't achieve the 1,016. That's all changed. As has been said by others in this chamber, the Secretary of State has issued draft MPPF guidance. They've used phrases such as this is mandatory and you cannot, a green belt is not a strong enough reason not to meet your numbers. We have an undetermined window because the MPPF guidance will come out in December or January, and we have a month from then, hopefully maybe 3 months. I'm conscious the time is ticking down fast, that we can get an opportunity in. And people have talked about continuing the Reg 18. That is not an option. Members have two choices here tonight. We go with the Reg 19, 1,016, as uncomfortable as it is, and see what the inspector makes of it, or we stop. Go back to the beginning, take another 2.5 years, and try and deliver a plan of 1,300 houses. 1,300 will be severely more damaging to decorum than what we're proposing this evening. Sometimes as members, you have to make difficult decisions. You have to realise that we're in a very centralised state where the government has the upper hand. We, as members here, and as much as our electorate would like us to think that we can make every decision that affects decorum, 90% of what we do is regulated by central government. And if we're not realistic in delivering a plan that satisfies government requirements, as has been said several times this evening, they will do it for us. The best opportunity we've got, and I know it's a very difficult decision for many, is to go out with a Reg 19 that satisfies national requirements at the minimum level we can deliver. The idea of losing control of the planning process and having a developer free-for-all, which we're already knocking at our door, we've got an appeal to defend now on a speculative site. We have to be bold. We have to accept that this is a very difficult decision. But on balance, the Regulation 19 is the best defence decorum has against the free-for-all across our borough, which will sacrifice far more greenbelt than we're talking about this evening. And as challenging as it is, I urge members to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillor England, I invite you to reply. Oh, I didn't see that, sorry. Councillor Sewell.
We are in a very difficult situation. Personally, I always support Greenbelt. We need to support this plan, otherwise there will be no plan. No plan means consequences will be difficult. So Labour is supporting.
Thank you. Any more? Right. Councillor England, I invite you to reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to speak to the public sitting at the back there. I want to say thank you for coming. Councillors will know that it is rare for there to be more than 4, 5, 6 people here at a council meeting. I've said for a long time, and I said last week, that I think it is healthy for us to have public participation. I recognise that a lot of you have not been able to remain silent tonight. I know how hard that is. You're not given a microphone, and you want to be heard. I've heard about the emails that have come, and as I say, I've read as many as I possibly can because I really care about people having their say. A lower number will fail. No plan will abdicate responsibility. It is right up there among the most irresponsible things that a council can do to let the government come in and take over. And the government have said that that is what they will do. And they've backed up their words with plans to hire 300 planners to do it. It's going to happen unless we stop it. We need a local plan. Without it, every ward in this borough is being laid open for development. You have no idea where it's going to turn up next. I recognise we're talking about something which is very real for lots of you. You've been able to, you can see it, you've seen pictures of it. It's been the bane of your lives for years. But there are people all around this borough who at the moment don't know that there's a site fairly close to them which is about to be developed because we didn't protect it. I agree with Councillor Weston. Democracy is important and St Albans is at 100% and we need to be at 100%. And that's what this plan does. Reg 19 puts us on a par with St Albans, so I agree with Councillor Weston, but I think we have a different purpose. I recognise that Councillor Anderson has taken a position for 25 years, and 25 years is a long time. It's a little bit shorter than the time since I went to see Suzanne Vega here, but it's a long time. Shendish is on the list because we had a set of sites in a broadly similar area, which Hertfordshire County Council said there are no school places. So people who live in Apsley right now, who have to send their child to a non-optimal school, are going to be helped by the fact that HCC have stood up and said, you can't do what you want to do. You have, and that's a material change from Reg 18. I think that it does feel like we've got a gun to our heads, and there's no point denying that. But if there's a gun to your head, there is a gun to your head, and it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. What I want to say, this is really, really important for the public who are here. The Reg 19 actually gives everyone their say. You register, you send in your comments, and those comments are collected by Dacorum, but they're not processed by Dacorum other than to package them for the planning inspector. The planning inspector reads your comments, so make sure you don't miss that opportunity. If you have got enough evidence to convince the planning inspector that this plan needs to be modified, then give it a go. Try. Yes, thank you. What else to say? We should respond, but we should respond. That's what I want to say. Everybody here, make sure that you don't miss that opportunity. Councillor Johnson, again, accept that you're doing this on principle. There are some local situations which are affecting several councillors here, and I absolutely recognise that if I was a councillor in Tring, then I would feel this viscerally. I'm a councillor in Hemel Hempstead, and there's no way that I can claim to fully understand where you're at. I try as hard as I can. I'm reading every email, but there's no way that I can put myself in your position. What I have to do as leader of the council, and what we all have to do as members, is consider the whole borough. We have to do that. It's part of our responsibility. I think Councillor Madden is right. It comes to my previous point. It opens the floodgates. It's a free-for-all. There's no way that we can have that. We just can't let that happen. We'll be overtaken by events. We are overtaken by events. There was a general election. I'm sure that 2/3 of us voted in it. Probably everybody in this room, fairly politically engaged. You probably all voted in it. You didn't get the government you voted for. But that's democracy. Democracy is everyone. And the local plan is everyone too. Yabola Adliki, Councillor Adliki says we have a moral obligation. We certainly do have a moral obligation to the people that Councillor Diani mentioned who are on the housing list. We also have a moral obligation to prevent a free-for-all and the opening of the floodgates. Councillor Friedman, least worst case scenario. Yeah, that just about sums it up. It's not something that any of us want to do, but if you had to protect your family or a classroom, and there was a threat coming in that you knew you couldn't stop, other than to mitigate it in some way, I'm pretty sure that everyone in this room would do that, and that's what I'm advocating. I realise how hard this is for people who live next to Marshcroft. I really, really do. I've driven up there to see it. I've made a particular special trip to try and get around that site.
Order.
Very briefly, in the final 2 minutes, Councillor Tyndall has been around the block, and he reminded us that the government with a big majority can do what it wants to do. I said myself, we are a council, not a government. If we were a government, we could make the rules up, we could declare UDI for Dacorum, and we could have our own army and we could have our own, you know, we could do things the way we want, but we're not a government. So I think I'm going to come to an end now. Councillor Williams summed it up and spoke boldly. This is wider than Marshcroft. Marshcroft will be developed because everything is pointing that way. The Secretary of State put an obstacle in the way, but the Secretary of State isn't here anymore, it's a different person. And the planning inspector, who is still here, said that it had to happen. So I'm not an irresponsible person, I'm not an uncaring person, but this has real ramifications. And the ramifications, as I have written back to a number of correspondents, as many as I could, are that we have to protect this borough. We have to do the right thing. And there is a positive aspect, because I realise that people want Tring to stay as it is. I realise that people want the world to stay as it is. But if we let the world change under our feet and we don't address it, we will be the worse. Whereas if we try to remain in control of the situation, we will do the best for our communities. So I thank everyone for the debate tonight. I thank the officers for all the work that they've done on this. It's not easy, and we need their professionalism. I urge all councillors, in the best interests of every member of this borough, to vote for this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor England. Now come to Adele to say who can vote and who can't.
Can I just remind members, the members who declared at the start of the meeting that they will not be voting due to an interest they have declared should not vote.
Right. We'll now go to the vote on the recommendation from Cabinet for the local plan referral. To agree the recommendations, please vote yes. To oppose the recommendation, vote no. And if you wish to, you may select abstain. Please ensure that everyone in the room casts a vote that is able to, and I will now ask Democratic Services to open the vote, and if you have any issues, please raise your hand and an officer will assist you. Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to vote? Is there anybody having any difficulty? Anybody? Yes. It'll be lit up. Okay, the others will be grey. There'll be two grey and a yes? Thank you. Right. I do declare that the vote... Say that the recommendation has passed. That's the final word on it. I don't think that's... Yeah, right. The recommendations are set out in the Cabinet referral on the local plan are agreed. Right. Adrian, will you carry on with the rest? Thank you. Sally, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, yes, I think that the resident is asking for a recorded vote. I know that they are not allowed to ask for a recorded vote. I don't know, it's too late. We've done it now. I don't think it will change anything, do you? No, but we're asking for a recorded vote for our residents.
No, it's too late. I've been advised it's too late. I've been advised it's too late, Councillor Pringle. So I can't do anything about it.
You didn't consult on a recorded vote.
Well, no, someone has to ask at the beginning of the vote if they want a recorded vote. No one did, so it wasn't recorded. That is exactly what the rules are. And I know that for a fact.
Perhaps I implore my colleagues to be honest enough to declare publicly how they voted.
I don't know. It's up to them. But at the moment, that's finished. Right, Adrian, carry on, please. Oh, sorry, Councillor Anderson.
Chair, can I suggest a 2-minute adjournment?
Adjournment?
To allow members of the public to behave
Go,
if they want
yeah.
to.
Yes, okay. Yes, 5 minutes. Allow them all to leave.
Continuing with the cabinet referrals, 4.2 CA/71/24, 23rd of July, Provisional Financial Outturn 2023-24. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. And the last one.
Is it seconded?
Is it? Oh, I need a seconder.
I second that.
Thank you.
And is it agreed?
Yes.
Thank you. 4.3 CA/82/24, 10th of September, Dacorum Council Corporate Plan, our plan for Dacorum. Is this seconded?
Second that.
Thank you.
And is it agreed?
Thank you. Now, we now vote. Oh, we don't need to do that now if it's agreed. Sorry about this. I've got a headache. Right. The recommendations are set out in the Cabinet referral on the corporate plan are agreed. Moving on to agenda item 5. I draw to your attention to the portfolio holder updates as published with the agenda. I will invite questions against each update in turn. Then there will be no verbal update from the leader, as this was already given to the ordinary meeting of the council that took place on the 25th of September 2024. When asking questions of the Cabinet, I would remind you it must relate to the item on which they are provided an update or the matter falling within their portfolio holder. Please also be reminded that the right to ask a question on any matter over which the Council has powers and duty or which affects the Borough would be subject to the rules as set out within the Council's constitution and proper notice would be required. Thank you. Any questions? Right, Councillor Bronham, any questions? Does he? Yes.
Yeah, my report is in the agenda. Are there any questions, please?
Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And can I ask the portfolio holder what is happening with the verge hardening programme, or as I understand it's been renamed, Parking Solutions?
Yes, you're right. It is renamed Parking Solutions. It is progressing. So we've got a whole report with a prioritised list of. I think we've got about 80 sites that have been nominated so far, and we've defined the criteria on which they are to be assessed. They are now being prioritised, and officers will be after those. The sites with the most merit have been chosen, then the contractors will be brought in, and there's a budget of £1.2 million which will be spent on that.
Thank you. Any other question?
Yes, Madam Mayor. My supplementary is it legal information that the Council has highlighted regarding the status of leisure land that is preventing schemes being installed at the Galley Hill end of Spring Lane and in the cul-de-sac end of Quinces Croft?
That sounded like a very specific question. Is it possible to send me and the officers an email to let us give you an answer to that?
Yes, please. And if you can copy Councillors Elliott, Durrant and Pound in, please.
Thank you. Councillor England? Oh, sorry, I missed somebody. Sorry, Councillor Doris.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Bromham, could I first of all just
on the previous point that Councillor Guest was making, it is normal, I think, for when a question is asked and a written response is provided, it's responded to the whole council, not to individual councillors. So if you can make a note of that, I'd be very grateful. You don't need to respond to that, because I have another question for you, which is with regard to the Councillor Guest's original question regarding verge hardening, or whatever it's called today. Could you give us a timeline of this? Because you've mentioned some figures, funding, you've mentioned some activities, but you're not actually telling us when it's likely to come about. And I think that the public and our residents would be very interested in that.
We'll have to come back with a written response on the timeline of the project.
Thank you.
Supplementary.
Is that yes?
Could you give me a timeline by which you will respond with a written report? Shush, you're on my side.
I'll have a chat with the officers, and I hope we'll be able to respond within a week.
Thank you. Councillor England. Oh, sorry, I've missed again. Councillor Williams.
Sorry, I'll have to shout louder. Councillor Bromham and I have a mutual acquaintance in our respective ward who does an awful lot of litter picking, and Councillor Bromham will know exactly who I'm talking about, who this week raised the issue of, or the lack of, enforcement of litter hotspots, which I think Councillor Bromham has given a short response to. But my question would be, does he feel, or would he be in a position to investigate more robust observation, CCTV, of some of these litter hotspots, because clearly our residents continually clearing them for us is not a sustainable situation, and there is regular fly tipping in some of these places, which I feel we ought to be tackling more robustly.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, I know who you mean. Can I mention the person?
Yes.
Robert Goldstein, been in Leverstock Green, does an absolutely fantastic job. He really cares for the community in many ways, and he often goes out collecting rubbish and reporting issues. And he has reported a lot of fly tipping issues, and I think it's particularly exacerbated because the area where he normally goes, Westwick Row and Green Lane, are quite near to Junction 8 on the M1, and I suspect that increases, that proximity probably increases the amount of fly tipping. It's the first small lane you come to after you come off the motorway. And I have talked to officers that although we've had a really good success recently, there was actually a licensed waste collector who was prosecuted because he was found to be tipping the waste, and I think he got a £13,000 fine. So we want to do that much more, and that does mean, so I have asked the officers to investigate installing surveillance cameras and any other methods that they can find to achieve more prosecutions of the most egregious offenders in terms of fly tipping. So the main challenge is budgetary.
Have you got a supplementary? No. Right, thank you. Right, Councillor Madden.
Thank you. Dare I go back to the parking solutions again? You said that you've got a list of places to be looked at. I don't know if I missed an email, because I've got a list of places that I would like to talk about, and I've been trying to find out who it is that's responsible for it. And I found out very recently that it's Dan Roger that I need to talk to now, as far as officers. But I would like to add to your list, please, if I possibly can. Thank you.
Yes, it's probably, Dan Roger works for Ian Ross. It's probably best to send your list to him, and he will integrate it with his.
Thank you. Got a supplementary? Councillor Timmis.
Thank you. I'd like to ask about the playground refurbishment programme, and just to ask whether there's any provision for disabled children in these playgrounds.
The officers are very much aware of the needs of disabled children, and those requirements do vary hugely, but they are certainly aware. There are some playgrounds which are more suitable than others. It tends to be the ones that have got, as I recall, the hard sort of rubber type surface, which are particularly accessible. Unfortunately, that kind of surface is quite expensive. So what I've suggested to officers is that we try to identify the particular ones which do have better access for disabled people. We'd like them all to be of that higher standard, but the budget doesn't stretch that far.
Have you got a supplementary?
Well, I just would like to know which playgrounds have actually made the provisions, if possible. I do have a supplementary question very briefly about the River Gade restoration, because now we've got massive road works going on, I'd say, down in Great Gadsden. And I just wonder whether, you know, what's actually happening there, because it looks like the whole river's been dried up while they're doing various pipes and things. Do you know what's going on there?
I presume you're talking about the Gade restoration in the Gade Bridge Park.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about it much further up. I suppose it'd be up rather than down, at Great Gadsden, where there's a lot of work going on with diggers and everything else. And I just wondered what it was about. And I think a lot of the locals would like to know too.
I'm not familiar with that. I shall find out. It may be the Environment Agency that's doing the work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, now I think we will go to Councillor England.
Okay, my report, as in the agenda. Welcome any questions.
Councillor Doris.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor England, would you join with me in applauding the £410,000 investment that everyone active has actually put in for the new fitness and gym equipment at Hemel Hempstead and Berkhamsted leisure centres, and also note that the usage of the leisure centres during 2023-2024 has increased significantly, which rather confirms the wise action of the previous administration in appointing everyone active to operate our leisure centres, in the face, I think, of some objections from some people who might even be in this chamber this evening.
Councillor England.
Thank you, Mayor. Close observers of the last few years will know exactly what Councillor Doris is thinking about. Some of you probably too young to even know about that. I haven't been the biggest fan of having a non-sports space outfit in charge of our leisure services, but I think on reflection, I've never actually been against any particular organisation. It's just more that I thought it was better the way it was. But I recognise in the light of tonight's debate, I need to reconsider my position on that. And I absolutely welcome £110,000 of investment in this borough, because we really need investment. Thank you.
Any supplementary?
Yes, if I may, that's good to hear on both counts of your response.
Thank you. Councillor Smith-Bright, please.
Oh, yes, sorry. Hello, I'm new to this position. So the report is People and Transformation and Climate in Economic Emergency Portfolio, and I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doris.
It's nice to hear you say that you're new. It rather reminds me of Aldi. But like Aldi, once it's new, you can still go in and buy things and ask questions and see if you can buy them.
things. So that's very good. And here is my question. I take my guidance, of course, from the venerable and honourable former Councillor Hollinghurst, always preceding his question with a long introduction. So I learn from my peers. But seriously, I noticed that within the forum, you've upgraded the Wi-Fi. And I think that's, would you join with me in applauding that? Because I am aware that the Wi-Fi in certain areas within the forum have been pretty woeful. And that's actually, dare I say it, had an impact on the efficiency of some members of staff. So I applaud you for that. And would you agree that that's a forward step? And there's a nice, easy question for you as you are new. The next one won't be.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. I think that was me actually that did that.
Oh.
Okay. Well, I will thank Councillor England and thank you very much for your welcome. And yes, I completely agree. Without good Wi-Fi in our current world, it's very difficult to communicate. So fantastic that we've got this new Wi-Fi link and we can all communicate super fast. So thank you.
Thank you. Any more? No. Right, the next person, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also have inherited a report, but I'm happy to try my best to answer any questions there are.
Thank you. No, there are none. So Councillor Derrick. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dewis.
It's been a long and tedious evening. So would Councillor Allen share with me the delight to know that I am not asking him any questions?
I would like to note my disappointment not to have a question from Councillor Duris.
Thank you. Any supplementary? No. Councillor Diani.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I welcome any question. Thank you.
Thank you. No, given that reason. Nope. Yeah. Right. Motions. Now to agenda item 6, the motions. We have been advised it is the intention of the mover of the motion to withdraw. Councillor Banks, can you please confirm?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Indeed, in light of the time that's passed since I've originally submitted my motion and the evident work that councillors have undertaken, council officers have undertaken to work tirelessly to engage with residents, and may I ask that my thanks be passed on for that work, I'm happy to withdraw my motion.
Thank you. Agreed. Moving to agenda item 7, business from the last council meeting. All updates are provided in the action point list as published in the report pack. Does council note that update?
Great.
Thank you. That concludes the business of the extraordinary meeting. Thank you, everyone. This meeting is closed.